What is going on with the player regression for the University of Arizona under Brent Brennan? Is this something that can be fixed?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. This show is brought to you today by FanDuel. Check it out. All kinds of really good stuff at FanDuel. You know this is the time of the year where you can make your plays. So, again, go to FanDuel and check it out. Oh, another one, you will thank me later. All right, now, we are going to talk about this team under Brent Brennan and exactly what is going on because there has been some massive player regression that I don't think is very difficult to notice at all. And again, it's early on. So again, this is one of the first three games of this, or this is the first 3 games of the year. I totally get it. So, but without further ado, let's talk about that a little bit. And what this all means. Now, the first thing that I think is very, very clear is that the offense is not nearly what it was. And outside of TMac, nobody is really what they are. Now, TMac, as we know, is a generational talent. TMac, players come through here like him, once every 15 years, something like that, and maybe not even that. If you were to tell me that TMac is leaving here as the best player in school history, I'm not going to really argue with you at this point. I always thought that Chris McAllister was the best player I've ever seen here. TMac might even be better. I mean, he's just that good. He's going to be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. It's easy to see why people are so high on him. But after that, it becomes kind of interesting, though, because let's talk Noah Fifita for a second. We all know that Noah Fifita can play football. I mean, that is very apparent. When you watch Noah, you can watch him for 5 minutes and say, yeah, that dude gets it. That guy understands, what he's supposed to be doing out there. You saw it last year, too. When Jaden Delora was out there, this team looked terrible. They didn't look like they had any clue what was going on, and it just didn't look good. Noah Fifita comes in. He immediately starts taking the plays that the defense is giving him. He also starts making plays downfield. He just starts, whatever it was. Guys that were not open before, all of a sudden started getting open. The easy touch or the easy first downs that were not being made started getting made. It was just a totally different offense under Noah Fifita, and again, we all saw that. We know what we saw. But Noah has not looked sharp at all this year. Not only has Noah not looked sharp, he's also not looked like he is the. He just hasn't looked like he is in command of that offense, and I think that's something that is a little disconcerting, to be honest with you, and that. He's running around. The offensive line hasn't really been there for him. And again, we're going to get to that. But I don't blame Noah for this. I know how good Noah is. We've all seen how good Noah is. I put this definitely in some other directions. Now, you could say that Noah's made some poor throws. The play against Kansas State, he was way late on TMac for that touchdown, obviously. But overall, he just hasn't looked like he's in concert with his receivers, with the game. And as we said before the season, if that was ever going to be the case, then I was going to blame Dino Babers because we've seen what Noah Fifita can do, and he just hasn't looked comfortable. The O-line has obviously not done him any favors, and he's backpedaling, and every now and then he's missing some players as well. He's late. That's just something that can't really happen if you're That's just something that can't really happen if you're the University of Arizona, because you need Noah Fifita to be that franchise type player, and you just haven't seen that yet. And I think that's a massive issue, because this is a guy who was a freshman All-American last season. And not only was he a freshman All-American, he was also a dude who you watched him and you're like, man, that guy is going to be one of the best players in college football for a long time. We haven't really seen any of that. So, and again, I put that on Brent Brennan. Brent Brennan, Dino Babers, to be honest with you, because I've already seen what he can do, and he just hasn't looked right. Now, let's talk about the offensive line. The offensive line, to me, is the one that really is the head scratcher, because, again, you returned 4 starters on this, including 3 guys that we know for a fact can play. Big Jonah Savanea, first-round pick type. We know that Big Jonah can play. Big Jonah is a good football player. We know that. And not only is Big Jonah a good football player, we also know that He's the dude who you watch him and you can tell for about what, 5 seconds. He's different. We've talked about it from day one. He's a first round pick. He's got that type of talent. He's on all kinds of draft boards. And not only is he on all kinds of draft boards, for a fact just how good he is. He started here from day one. When Jedd Fisch came in, Jedd Fisch said there's probably not he's never really seen somebody come in that carries his weight like Big Jonah at 18 years old, and he's right. We've seen good players come in here. We've seen Jordan Morgan come in here and leave here as a first round pick. Jordan Morgan did not come in here looking like Big Jonah Sabanea. And Sabanea has not been a dominant force this year. And this is somebody that needed to be a dominant force. And so far, he has not been a dominant force. And I think that is that's a problem for the University of Arizona, is that he just hasn't looked that way. Arizona needs that. Wendell Moy, same thing. Wendell Moy, now again, not necessarily a lock first round pick, but somebody that, certainly was easy to see playing in the NFL. That has not been the case. He has not looked that way at all. That is another really, really big issue that I think for Arizona fans. Josh Baker, same way. Josh Baker has been a stalwart on this offensive line for 3 years, calling out plays, making things happen when it matters. He has not been good. Not only has he not been good, he has not. He's been okay. He's been okay, but the offensive line just hasn't looked the part. And again, I get that you're losing Jordan Morgan. I get he's a first round pick. I understand that when players, when first round picks just don't come and go here at the U of A. I totally understand all of that. But at the end of the day, they should also this line should have still been better. They got absolutely pushed around like no other against Kansas State, and that is a massive problem. And it didn't really look like that it was something that was going to be totally correctable either. And I think that's another issue, is that it just didn't feel like it was correctable. Maybe this is something that does, but Josh Oglesby has he's basically enacted a totally different offensive line approach, where he is saying that, I don't want guys to just hold. I want guys to be able to get downfield. And, it just hasn't worked so far. Now, again, maybe it will work in the future, but I don't know it's one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Last year, it really wasn't broke. We'll find out though, but so far it hasn't looked good. But the offensive line, though, to me has shown major, major regression. Again, I don't know that I expected it to certainly be as good, because you lost Jordan Morgan, but I also didn't expect it to take this kind of a step back. And that to me also is just kind of, again, on coaching. This has just not been an impressive turnaround. I'll put it to you like that. I also, so that synergy though that the offensive line had has just not been good. Not only has it not been good, doesn't look like this is really anywhere where they can continue to get better. So we will find that. We'll find that out. But again, so far, not been impressed at all. I do think that, maybe there's a way that this can get back on track, because the talent is there, but it certainly doesn't look like it's at this point yet. Maybe it changes, who knows, but I don't know that we're going to, I don't know that we're seeing that right now. Now with this team, the other thing too you got to look at is the tight ends. I think there was a lot of hope for the tight ends. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, FanDuel. Check it out. FanDuel. All kinds of good stuff at FanDuel. FanDuel.com. The great thing about FanDuel is that in this day and age, you got college football, you got the NFL, you got all kinds of really good stuff with FanDuel. The great thing about FanDuel as well is that your money is good. And I think that is a very, very big part about this, and is that that FanDuel, that your money is good, and this is the time of the sports season that you want to be involved with FanDuel. So check it out. Another one, you will thank me later on with FanDuel. You also know that you can bet during games, you can bet before games. Heck, you can bet games. You can bet games into the future. Either way, get on to FanDuel. FanDuel.com. Another one, you'll thank me later. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now, let's talk a little bit about the tight ends. In camp, Kean Burnett looked like he was going to be a monster this year. He looked like a player that was going to be somewhat transcendent in that he was catching passes. He was pushing people around. He looked like what a 4-star tight end is supposed to look like, a player that was committed to USC at some point. And so far, you have seen next to nothing. You have seen next to nothing of that at all during camp. And again, that I think is a little bit of an issue. Where has that been? Because they've been saying they are going to utilize the tight end. And not only did they say they were going to utilize the tight end, they said that they were going to they said that was going to be a little bit of the case, and that has not been the case. So that's what you got to check it out with it there. Hold on. When it comes to this squad, though, you also got to know that the tight end has just not been there. Same now, the running back. Again, I think with Jonah Coleman, you also got to say that with you lost Jonah Coleman, and I get that you lost Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, but I think you were also thinking that this running game would still be able to sustain. It's shown flashes for sure, and Quali Conley is a good running back, but the running game also hasn't been up to par, and I think that's a concern as well. But overall, the offense has just been an absolute mess, and I put all that at the hands of Dino Babers. It just hasn't been imaginative, and not only has it not been imaginative, there hasn't been one time when you've watched the offense and you're like, okay, they got an identity. They're slow down. It looks like they want it to every drive. It looks like they want to be it's a 2nd and long. It's a 3rd and 5. There's just nothing easy. And I think that's the concern if you're Arizona, is that there is nothing easy. So if there's nothing easy, what are we really doing here now? Because, again, we thought that this was going to be a top 15 unit. Now, let's talk about on the defense. Now, the defense, to me, is a little bit more hit or miss. Now, I do have to say this. With the defense, they did only give up 7 points through 2.5 quarters against Kansas State. I get all of that. But we've also got to call a spade here. This has been a defense that against running attacks has not been able to stop anything. And not only has it not been able to stop anything, it has looked disastrous in the process. The contain has been disgusting. And not only has the contain been disgusting, it's been non-existent. Not only has it been non-existent, it's been basically to the point, too, where you're like, okay. And Kansas State showed that. Kansas State has a quarterback that we know for a fact cannot throw the football. So Arizona still decides to give up over 300, 400 yards on the ground, and the contain, like I said, wasn't there. One thing, I like Dwayne Aquina. I think he knows a lot about football. But one thing that I do not understand is his the theory about we're going to get defensive linemen that are going to push upfield as opposed to holding their gaps. Cool, fine. But you need to still have the best players. When you got somebody like BBN, who is a really good football player, he has proven it. And Arizona, they basically decided, yeah, we don't really need BBN. And they just didn't make him really feel wanted. And I think that's a big problem. I think they thought that Chuba May would be able to be that dude. And listen, as everybody likes Chuba, everybody likes the theory of Chuba, but Chuba May is not Big Bill Norton. He's just not. And he's never going to be. He's just not as good in any aspect. So the coaching staff whiffed badly there. Also, at the end, Trey Smith's not bad. I'll give Trey Smith that. Ty, not bad, but the interior or the defensive tackles just don't look good. And that's obviously been a massive step back. Chuba's just not that guy. Like Isaiah Johnson, I don't know where he was in this last game, so that hasn't been good. The backups, Lance Kennelly, not been good. Now, at the linebacker spot, Jacob Manu has looked very, very average this season. And all of a sudden, with Jacob Manu, I don't know how a player like that looks average, because he has been super, super good in the past. And you've never watched Jacob Manu and said, man, that guy doesn't understand football. That guy doesn't understand where he should be. Now, all of a sudden, you're like, man, what's going on with Jacob Manu? that has never been the case before. And again, that's why I put this on the coaching staff. If you don't know, if you've got a player that's done a lot of really good stuff over the years and all of a sudden he can't play anymore, I'm going to put that on the staff, period, point blank. Now, Tay Brown, the fact that Tay Brown never comes off the field, obviously, I think is a little bit of an issue as well. And then you go into the secondary. Tacario Davis has not looked good. I don't know how else to put it. This has not looked like a first-round pick. I thought going into the season, I liked Tacario Davis, but I thought he was a little bit overrated. This is like I said, that's obviously a little bit of an issue, but the secondary has not looked good. Overall, like I said, the coaching staff has just not done anything where you're like, man, they're really maximizing players. Now, you could say TMac, I get all that, but TMac is such an exception to the rule that, if TMac is struggling, then, that's next level craziness. So there is that. Now, I think one thing that we also need to figure out too is what exactly, though, is there anything that's correctable? And we're going to talk about that tomorrow on the show. What is correctable? Is there anything that's correctable? Because I don't know that there's anything that's correctable. Now, when it comes to the defense, contain certainly should be correctable. There shouldn't be a time where you're like, man, this team has no clue what they're doing. And defensively, that's been the case, whether that was against New Mexico, whether that was against Kansas State. It's just looked awful. And it looks a lot of times like the coaching, like it just doesn't know like what's going on. That is a major, major issue for this coaching staff, and we're going to have to see if they can get it. But again, Jacob Manu to me in that regression is pretty much the telltale sign that there's something major going on here, because that should never be the case. Player like Jacob Manu, we know how good he is. Again, we know how good he is, and he has looked lost. I put that on the coaching staff. So there is that. So overall, there's not a lot to like. Now, again, I am not going to have the same problem with the defense that I do with the offense, because with the offense going into this season, I think that we all thought that, that there was this should be a dominant unit. And then with the defense, I think we were just hoping it was bend but don't break. Against NAU, it was really good. Against Kansas State, it was okay. But the offense has been the problem. And like I said, I don't put this on Noah Fafita. I put this on a very archaic coaching staff to this point. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But first, 5-hour energy. Now you might watch this offense and say, man, Dino Babers, this guy looks tired. This looks like a tired offense. Maybe Dino Babers needs a little bit of 5-hour energy. Maybe he needs to, maybe the offense needs a little bit of 5-hour energy. I do not know, but check it out again. 5-hour energy, another one that just works. The great thing about 5-hour energy is, for a fact that you will, that it works and people have used it before. That is the other thing that is great about it, is that, this isn't something where you just have to take my word for it. That 5-hour works, and it can work for you as well. So again, check it out. 5-hour energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk about this coaching staff overall a little bit. Brent Brennan so far has left a lot to be desired. When you watch him on the sideline, it doesn't look like he has really an idea of what's going on. Or that there's any corrections. He was talking about the slow developing running play, and he's like, well, we were doing this to be able to do that. Well, that's cool. You don't have the personnel to be able to execute that. And if you don't have the personnel to be able to execute it, you shouldn't do it. It's like a coach saying, I had Randy Moss, and that's what we do. We just throw the ball and we chuck it deep. Well, that's cool. That works if you've got Randy Moss. If you got Mike Luke, that is not going to work. And that is the issue that I think is the problem with this, is that you watch this team and you're just like, man, there's just really no understanding of what's going on here. And I think I think that is just more of the issue, is that it doesn't look like this staff has any clue whatsoever how to maximize these players. And you don't get the sense that answer is coming anytime in the future either. And like I said, I watched this and I'm like, man, there is a lot of issues in play here. And it just kind of looks like this coaching staff is kind of out of its element at this point, or at least certain members of this coaching staff. Brent Brennan said today, we don't really know what our identity is. That's a problem. That's a major problem. You inherited a team with a lot of talent that needed to win, that needs to win now, and you're already this far in, and you don't know what the identity of your team is. That's an issue. That cannot be the case. And I mean, I guess I give Brent Brennan credit for that, but it also shows that I think he's kind of lost right now. And for the people that are saying, well, can he just take over play calling? I don't think he's ever called a play in his life. So that's not happening. So we're kind of at this impasse now where you don't really know what the next move is, because I don't think that Brent Brennan knows what that next move is. When it comes to Danny Gonzalez, I like Danny Gonzalez. He's probably been put in a spot where, that's been less than ideal, having to play just two linebackers. The special teams have not looked good, but Danny Gonzalez has also not been coaching the special teams for a while. I'm a big believer in having a full-time coach at special teams. That has not been the case for Arizona, and that has shown on the field as well. But overall, listen, man, I mean, I think there's a couple coaches on this staff that I like Alonzo Carter. I think it's difficult to watch Alonzo Carter and not be impressed by the running backs that he's gotten. But overall, this has been an F performance. I mean, so far, this has been a team that looks like if they played good teams, they would get annihilated. And you got Utah coming up. Now, again, going to caution, this is 3 games into the season, so who knows? Maybe some things do change a little bit, but so far, you really don't get that. You really don't get that indication that things are going to change, and you don't look at Brennan on the sideline and say, "Man, that's a guy that's going to be able to have the last laugh." You just don't really get any of that. So we'll see. Now, the next show we're going to talk about are what are issues, if any, are correctable. Are there correctable issues, or is this just something where Arizona is just going to be basically going for a 5 to 6 win season, and we're kind of right back where you are, where you can't really sustain anything. And I think that's a little bit of the issue. So we will see. But like I said, there's just no other way to put it. I don't care what the record is. I don't care about any of that. I think we're at the stage in football where you go by what you see, and what you see so far has been incredibly unimpressive. And, with Brent Brennan, listen, I mean, he was banking that he was going to win, because if you get blown out by Utah, you can't all of a sudden now come to people in town and say, hey, come to the games, come to this. You've essentially done nothing in the community. You said that's not your job. Fair enough. You've also not put the players out there at all. Fair enough. But if you get destroyed by Utah and people are all saying, hey, when's basketball season start? You can't sit here and say, oh, well, we really need you guys to come out and support. That is not a strategy. So we will find out. But we're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that a lot on the next show. And like I said, we're going to talk about, too, the strategy and where all of this does lay, because I think there's a lot of confusing things for a lot of different Wildcat fans that I don't think really anybody quite understands. So we're going to talk about that. But as always, very, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow.